Okay, here's another video request. Video request from Kyle Costa. He goes, I'd like to see a video about your views on the Occupy movement. Were you involved? Did you know anyone involved? Is it still active? Thanks, brother. I did a video about the Occupy movement a couple of years ago when somebody did a request, but before I really knew what it was, and I thought it was cool. Yeah, the Occupy movement is good. It's basically people speaking up and saying that they don't like that there's so much wealth discrepancy at the hands of the bankers. The top 101% of society is 20% wealthier than everybody else now than they were in the late, like 30 years ago in the late 70s. Because in 78 under Carter, they passed a law that said that corporations were human, so corporations could lobby the companies as though they were people on behalf of their corporations, because I guess the people weren't lobbying their governments enough, and so they passed that law. And so after that, instead of what they call lobbying, is basically representatives of the corporations giving the politicians money to do what they tell them to do. And so the Young Turks talk about this on a daily basis. It happens all the time. But like a year ago, somebody gave a congressman up in South Dakota like $200 to pass a law that that gave some huge contract to a private prison to make it so that the private prison to make a law so that the private prison could I can't remember what it was, but it was a total bullshit decision that you would have to be insane to make, because it just made the private prison. Oh God, what was it? This is like a year ago. Anyways, the politician was paid $200 for that. So people go in, they pay them this, that, or the next thing. Politicians make I think 60,000 a year or whatever. They spend more money to get elected than they ever make in their entire 4 years of office. So that obviously that tells you who's paying for them to get elected. They're not. It's their the politicians are just do what their corporations tell them to, and because of that, we make all these laws that bail out the bankers. The bankers are gambling with our money, and then when they win, of course, they get filthy rich and they make $20 million a year and get $1 million bonuses and all this stuff. And then when they lose, the American taxpayer bails them out and they don't go to jail. It happens over and over again. And it's obviously criminal and they obviously go to jail, but they don't. And then we have all these laws where some lady, I can't remember her name, but she got busted because her boyfriend was selling crack, but it was in her attic, and so she got life behind bars. Obama let her go a couple months ago, but this kind of stuff, people just letting the rich guy away and throwing the poor guy away in jail. And then, so the Occupy movement is just us taking to the streets and exercising our First Amendment right to demonstrate against the government, and then just letting everybody know that we don't, and then the people getting up and telling everybody else with the bullhorn exactly what the bankers are doing and why it's all bad, and the whole fallout from that was really interesting to see how Fox News tried to make him out to be like Bill O'Reilly, trying to make him out to be just lazy people who were just angry that they didn't work hard enough to have a good job, and so now they're going to try to take it out on the people who did work hard enough to have a good job. When you talk to somebody who, like a Fox News type of person, a hardcore Republican, who are into this whole capitalism stuff, they're angry against the Occupy movement. They're not going to give a very deep reason. They're just going to say, "Oh, this is America. If you want to get rich, you should be able to get rich." What? You're trying to take, it's like if you want to, if you're the strongest guy on the block and you want to, take everybody else's possessions and have everything, then you should be able to do that, and the government shouldn't get in your way. Those are people who are in that system. Because it's a whole system, when you have a whole system that grows up around that, people fall into it, and then that's their life and that's their skill, and how are you going to tear them out of it? They'll stick to it, and especially if they make a lot of money, because now they've got family members who are dependent on them, and it's like now they're not doing it just for them, they're doing it for their family who's dependent on them, and it's just ay, ay, ay. So we have to rebel, and we have to, take to the streets, and that's how we change. That's how the French Revolution happened, people taking the streets. That's how the Russian Revolution happened. And so with the Occupy, legally we can do it, and then we can see how other people react. People were kicking people off the streets. So which is proof. Sometimes if everybody knows that the rich people are own the politicians and are abusing us, sometimes you have to prove it so that we all know it. So that not just the smart people know, but everybody knows it. And the way to show that is by having the Occupy, and then having the people kicked off the streets and stuff, or off the park. If you're gonna be in the street disrupting the local businesses, then that's not good. But if you're gonna have a protest on a park where you're not in the way of traffic, then there's no reason the cops should come and kick you out. And if they do, then the cops are obviously, everybody can see that the cops are little bitches to whoever. So it just keeps it. Occupy movement helps us touch base on how stuff really is. And I'm sure the Occupy movement is still. I don't think people are camping out on the streets anymore, but people are now more aware. Because the fact of the matter is that we do need to have a dialogue to go going. How are we going to stop this wealth discrepancy? Is wealth discrepancy even bad? We haven't even gotten to that level. Is wealth discrepancy even bad? Well, yeah, dude. You can't have a world where most people have to work all day, every day, and only to barely pay rent, and then you have another bunch of other people who don't ever work at all, and nobody else they know works because they have so much money, they just give it off to their family members, and then they have this house and that house that are abandoned, except for like one weekend a year, and they buy this and they buy that, and and then we have an industry of just buying stuff just to buy, and then what? And then they throw their car away. Like people, when they get super rich, they start wasting. Like in the Middle East, people drive a brand new Mercedes around, then it breaks down the first time, they just leave it on the side of the road. That's wasteful. It kills the planet. People need to be thrifty. So people have to not be allowed to make too much money. And if you make too much money, you can do all sorts of weird shit. You start tweaking with society as though you're like God. Think that you're God, like the Koch brothers giving all this money to Americans for Prosperity and trying to get all these cronies in power so that they have to pay less taxes and get even richer and richer, because it's just a game, and they don't look at other people as humans. They just think it's this dog eat dog. They see a lion killing his girlfriend, and they think, oh, he was hungry, he ate her, and maybe he killed her just out of compassion. They look at they don't see the world through good lens. They see the world as this evil place where they have to. The guy on top is the one who doesn't get killed. But when you have countries like that, the countries like that don't do well. Like Libya and Iraq and stuff. We have to have a country rule of law, and so these rich people who only care about money, they're basically crazy. And it's sketchy when you have crazy people in power. And we almost did get a crazy person in power. Remember when McCain ran for president, and then he had Sarah Palin as his running mate? Sarah Palin did a speech the other day where she said, we baptize terrorists with waterboarding is how we baptize terrorists. I mean, she's nuts. Crazy people who are dumb, and they'll just do whatever their overlord corporate people tell them to. And it's creepy. So yeah, we have to. Oh, and then the rich people do all sorts of other shit. Like the Georgia Guidestones, and saying the world in the future only have 500 million people, and you don't know who made it, and you have to, it's all secret, and like James Bond type of stuff. You get so rich, you come up with this plan. Oh, I'm gonna kill everybody, or I'm gonna do this. I have the plan, and those stupid people. Like Ceausescu in Romania. I'm going to get all the people out of the fields, and I'm going to move them into the big cities. so they can have tons of babies, so that we can have will have a huge population, and that will make us a very strong economy and a great country. And so people are like, what? Yeah, yes, you do this, tearing people around, forcing people to do this, that, and the next thing. And they have all these like babies with no parents, and then he gets kicked out of office, and it's just bad. You can't have autocrats, and that's what the wealthy creates, a world of autocrats. And so that's what the Occupy is all about. The banks have too many. What our banks have been getting away with is not right. Gambling with our money. I mean, are you serious? The shit it's so obviously it should be illegal, but if everybody does it and it's part of our system and it's been going on forever, then you kind of have to take a step back to convince somebody that it's actually bad. Just because that's how the world is doesn't mean that's how the world should be. So, and it's been getting worse. There was a couple of other things that happened in the 70s that helped it go this way. There was when they made corporations people, but then there was something else that happened around the same time. Savings and loan usury laws. They took away the limits of how much interest could be on credit cards and stuff. It was like 8% until like 15 years ago, and now I was paying 23%. And people would say, "Oh, well, that's because people don't pay their credit card bills, and so everybody else pay for it." Well, you have to bust people when they don't pay, and the same thing for the banks. The big bankers. If they break the law, throw them to fucking jail. And that's simple. Anyways, that's all the details that I know off the top of my head right now. But like Goldman Sachs, they do all sorts of crazy shit. They had this. They were moving stuff around in warehouses because it would save them money, save them like millions of dollars if they bought something and then they sold it later because the price would go up later. And so then they spend all this money storing it because they have the money because. It's people deliberately setting up a system that's inefficient just to make them more money when it's inefficient for society. People not living by Christian ethics. So yeah, the Occupy movement is great. I wish that the Occupy movement, where the Occupy movement kind of went bad and made people look stupid, is that when they would have all these people on the streets just sitting around, when it should have been an educational thing. When the people are on the streets, they're there. Now give them something to do. Now you have to have a soapbox installed in every of the occupied places. The first thing you have to do is install the soapbox. For people to stand up, and you have to give a bullhorn. And then you have to have the people stand up and just basically talk and remind the people why they're there. And remind them what the banks do, and the banks do this, and the banks do that. And so all the people who walk in by can hear them, all the people at the place. And so that when the people leave, they're educated. It's like going to a seminar. It's like going to and then they can talk to each other and they can become smart. And then when people come up there, Fox News goes over and asks them why they're there, they have a good answer for them. They have to be more educated. So I think Occupy movement was version 1 of taking to the streets. And so then now people are all charging their batteries, getting their shit together. And when we have Occupy 2, when the next time that something fucked up happens that causes our attention to know how that the system's skewed towards the rich people, then we'll take to the streets again. Only this time people will be more educated, and then when Fox News goes and interviews them, they'll interview anybody and they'll be able to tell them exactly how it is. That's how it is with marijuana. You can go to like 420 gatherings and you interview people who stoners talking about weed, they'll blow you out of the water. You can't argue with them because they're smarter than you when it comes to weed. Same thing with Occupy. You have to make sure that the people who show up know why they're there and know what the banks are doing, because it's pretty simple what the banks are doing. They're gambling with our money, and then when they get busted and they go under, our taxpayers bail the banks out, and those people in the banks don't go to jail. And and if they get fired from their job, they just go and work for the government who regulates the banks, like the FCC, or the FCC. Who is that guy? Hank Paulson. He was the head of Goldman Sachs. He was making $300 million a year or whatever, and then when he gets off at Goldman Sachs, he then goes to work as the Secretary of the Treasury of America. just back and forth, back and forth. Why? Because the politicians who have the power that can put these people in place are put there with the campaign donations by the big companies. And there's two ways out of this. It's for the 38th Amendment to get the money out of politics is one, but also for people to know who they're voting for and to have smart people run for office who knew what they're doing. And so that's what I want to do. I want to get really smart and run for office in like 20 years when I know what's going on. And by then people will be hooked up to the internet enough that, I don't think we're going to need a 38th Amendment. I would like to get one because it's just so bad, and people follow money so much now. But I think we're going to have an explosion of conscience pretty soon where we won't need it. But we should definitely fight for it too, because laws are what make the world go around, and we have to have a law even if we don't need it. And we definitely do need it. Get that 38th Amendment to get money out of politics so that you can't have people donating millions of dollars to some dude running for Congress, and also people donating money. You don't even know how much money they're donating and who's giving them the money. That's another thing that we're trying to fight, and that's what Occupy is all about. So it's mainly about the bankers, but it's also everything tied into it. And so next time we have it, or if we have one in Boulder or wherever I'm at, yeah, I would like to see. I never went to it, but also, why didn't they have YouTube videos of people filming the Occupy? They need to have, how they have 24-hour cams in front of some stores or whatever, or ski resorts, show the weather. They need to have those at Occupy. Whenever you have a new Occupy at like Central Station or whatever, or Central Park in New York, you need to set up cameras so that you know exactly what it looks like with sound. It has to have it hooked up with sound with a website. And so it's speaker after speaker. So if you're going to watch the Occupy movement, you're going to see what's going on over at the park, Central Park, New York. You go to the website and you can actually hear somebody, and you can hear it crystal clear because the microphone of their talking is hooked up to the camera, and you can hear them giving their educational. So it's kind of like tuning into a YouTube channel where there's always somebody talking and giving lessons on what's going on. Only it's like the actual place. So if you want to, go there, you show up and you hear the person talk, and then you have conversations. It's a educational thing. So, because rich people who think that it's a dog eat dog world, and people should, if you're hardworking enough, that's what they say. That's not what they mean. If you kiss ass enough and you've played the system enough, good enough, then you should be able to get as rich as fuck. Well, those people need to be convinced that that's not the way, that it's better to share out the wealth. But the people who want to give that argument need to give a good argument. You don't want to come across as some stupid dude who's like, what? Yeah, fuck the bankers. Fucking fuck them, rich. Because that just scares people. You're not going to fight racism by some black dude coming up there and being like, fuck Whitey, kill old Whitey. And then it's like, oh shit, we need to get these black people back to Africa. You know what I mean? So it should be an educational thing, but yeah. Next Occupy is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And I can't wait till that happens. All right, peace out.